G'day, I'm Grandiose Imaginosa. You can call me Mike. I am writing the first story of a series of novels set on my world of Lan Weef. I'm trying out different descriptive passages of a particular character called Spalfurk. If you go back 2 videos, you'll have a different version of the description of Spalfurk. This is him thinking, ruminating, kind of. It was important to look important. Sapiens believed what they thought they saw. He had observed this many times in his early years without understanding what he was seeing. Pups from poorer houses than him would rise in public esteem simply because they were always fashionable. They changed at a whim, and this won them approval. He thought such changeability the opposite of an admirable trait. Among the lesser-known middle ranks of wealth, his house had high standing, and yet he was seemingly invisible, even as the only child of his house. In the destruction of the city and the slaughter of the houses, Spalfurk grasped a simple truth. The richest of his kind died first because it was easy to see they were rich. He never did understand that his own outdated clothing, he doesn't like to change, had camouflaged him in the first chaos of the destruction. He stumbled through the streets, a smaller than average non-entity who presented no threat and no prize. He shuffled past the angry mobs, tearing apart the parasite ranks who had ruled their world with bottomless greed and malignant indifference. Spalfurk did not look wealthy, so the mobs did not recognize him as one of the parasites they hunted. Spalfurk actually learned something as he ran away from the city of his birthright. He learned that how he looked could save his life or condemn it. When he found an older penitent curled up and long dead by the road, Spalfurk stripped his robes from him and put them on. Others on the road greeted him differently after that. He was invited to share campfires and sometimes even meals. The generous were folk of such low stations that Spalfurk had no idea how to speak to them, so he said little or nothing. These folk were lower than the servants in his house. He could not imagine wanting to say anything at all to them. His silence was taken as the humbleness of a penitent. By doing nothing and saying nothing, Spalfurk garnered the start of a good reputation. Spalfurk hated his undeserved poverty, but it was exactly what others expected in a penitent. The old robes and the silence made his life on the refugee road easier. Spalfurk liked easy, so he kept his robes, he maintained his silence, and he paid close attention to the leaders of the various groups he fell in with. Spalfurk noticed that the leaders people listened to were generally older. He did not notice that they also generally worked hard. Spalfurk noticed that these leaders were often slow of step, and Sapiens called them dignified. He thought the slow pace earned the title, rather than that the long years created both the slow pace and the dignity. On the refugee road, Spalfurk learned many things, but rarely did he learn even an approximation of the truth. By the time he arrived at Stone Garden, Spalfurk had long practice in walking with a slow, heavy step, moving as if considering every movement with care, listening enough to assure the speaker he was hearing them and agreeing in an astonishingly wide array of ways. Most sapients thought him wise when he listened and agreed. Spalfurk began to believe what others believed. He believed he was important. He was generous with his time. He was wise and humble. He believed his presence helped many situations. He also believed that as the only son of a ranking house, it was naturally right that others recognize his importance and treat him as better than them. Okay, so that's not strictly a first draft, that's a first and a half draft, because the first draft had lots of run-on sentences and way too many ideas and descriptions crammed in one sentence, because that tends to be what goes on in my head. No full stops, very few very few commas, just blah, 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 next idea, next idea, next idea. No good. No good for the reader. No good for clarity. So, that's a quite different way of presenting Spalfurk than the way that you will see in the video 2 videos ago. I intend to write a third one. I've put off writing the third one because I think the third one will be harder. It will be a very different style. I'm not going to try and describe. I'll just write it and you can decide for yourself what it might be called or what the difference is. But now that I've said that, I kind of going to have to write it, and I've been putting off writing it because trying to write in the style that I have in my head, it's one thing to have that vague feeling in your head of a paragraph. I don't know if anyone else out there understands what I'm talking about. You haven't actually spoken the paragraph or the sentence in your head, but you know what it feels like. You might even kind of know what it looks like without knowing the words. You might even know of a writer or a passage or a poem or something that is similar in style, and that's the feeling in your head. But yeah, I really have no idea how to write that. Well, the short answer is the obvious answer. You write it by writing. And if you don't get it the first time, then you write it again. It's one of the most obvious truths that I'm telling myself as a 60-year-old. The only way to be a good writer is to write and write and write and write. There's more to it than that, but no one got super good at anything without lots of doing of that thing. And in this case, writing. Quite hard to say. Okay, that's enough of this one. I am Grandiose Imaginosa. This is my channel. I am writing. I hope you're reading. I'm having fun. Are you?